Imagine this. A confident black woman, sharp and unshakable, finds herself face to face with a racist cop determined to abuse his authority. What starts as a routine encounter quickly spirals into a tense battle of wit, courage, and justice. At first, it seems like the officer has all the power, but what he doesn't know is that she's not just any woman. She's smart, prepared, and ready to flip the script. As the confrontation unfolds, the cop's arrogance blinds him to the fact that she's 2 steps ahead. Every move he makes only tightens the trap she's carefully set. But what exactly is her plan? And how does she manage to turn the tables so completely that the cop is left speechless and stunned? Stay tuned, because this story takes a twist you'll never see coming, and the ending will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power and justice. It all started on an ordinary evening when she was driving home after a long day. The streets were quiet, the air heavy with a calm that felt almost too perfect. Then, out of nowhere, the flash of red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror. She knew exactly what was happening. As the car pulled up behind her, she took a deep breath, steadying herself for what she had a feeling was coming. The officer approached her car with an air of authority that felt more like intimidation. His words were sharp, his tone dismissive, and his questions carried an undertone she couldn't ignore. But she stayed composed, responding with respect and calm confidence. What he didn't realize was that she'd been in situations like this before. This time, however, she wasn't just prepared to comply, she was ready to hold him accountable in a way he never expected. As the officer's questions grew more pointed, she noticed his tone shifting from routine to condescending. He asked for her license and registration, but his eyes lingered on her, searching for something, anything, to justify his growing hostility. She handed over her documents without hesitation, her steady hands masking the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Meanwhile, her phone, carefully mounted on the dashboard, was already recording. She had learned long ago that documentation was her best defense. As the officer returned to his patrol car, she quickly reviewed the footage, ensuring everything was captured. But this wasn't just about protecting herself, she had a plan, one she had been preparing for months. The officer returned, this time accusing her of an infraction she knew she hadn't committed. His words were laced with veiled threats, but instead of reacting with fear, she calmly asked him to clarify. Her unexpected confidence caught him off guard, setting the stage for a confrontation he never anticipated. The officer's patience was wearing thin, and his frustration began to show. He leaned closer, his voice low but firm, as he tried to intimidate her into submission. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his tone dripping with authority. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with unwavering composure, her calm demeanor only fueling his irritation. What he didn't realize was that every word he said was being documented, not just by her phone, but by the small recording device she carried everywhere. She had researched her rights and knew the lines he was crossing. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about holding him accountable and exposing the truth. When he demanded she step out of the car, the tension skyrocketed. The air felt heavy, and the silence stretched thin. But as she opened the door, a quiet confidence radiated from her. She wasn't backing down, and the officer was about to find out just how prepared she truly was. As she stepped out of the car, the officer's eyes narrowed, sensing he might be losing control of the situation. He attempted to regain the upper hand, demanding she move to the front of his patrol car. She complied, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to his growing agitation. The tension was palpable, but what happened next caught him completely off guard. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed another car pulling up nearby. A middle-aged man stepped out, wearing a suit and holding a briefcase. "Is there a problem here, officer?" he asked, his voice calm but commanding. The officer's confident facade faltered for a moment as he recognized the man, a well-known attorney in the area who had a reputation for taking on cases of police misconduct. The officer's demeanor shifted immediately, but it was too late. The attorney informed him that he was now a witness to the interaction, and he wasn't leaving until everything was resolved. The stakes had just been raised, and the officer now found himself in a position he couldn't easily escape. The attorney's presence shifted the energy completely. The officer, caught between maintaining his authority and knowing he was being watched, stammered as he tried to justify his actions. "I had reasonable suspicion," he muttered, but the attorney quickly interrupted. "Suspicion isn't enough to infringe on her rights, officer. I've been recording since I arrived, and from what I've seen, you're in dangerous territory." As the tension mounted, she stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "Officer, I know my rights, and I've been recording since this began. If you've made a mistake, now's the time to correct it." For the first time, the officer hesitated. The realization that he was trapped by her preparation, the attorney's intervention, and his own actions was written all over his face. Just as it seemed the officer might back down, a second squad car pulled up. A senior officer stepped out, surveying the scene. But instead of defending his colleague, he turned to her and said, "I've reviewed your footage from earlier. Thank you for your cooperation. You're free to go." The twist: the senior officer was part of a new oversight program targeting abuse of power, and the initial stop had unknowingly been monitored the entire time. The cop's reckless behavior wasn't just exposed, it became a case study in accountability. With the tables fully turned, she walked away, her quiet strength leaving an unforgettable impression on everyone involved. As she drove away, the weight of the encounter began to lift. She wasn't just relieved, it was a moment of validation, proof that preparation and courage could turn even the most unjust situations around. The attorney stayed behind, ensuring the officer's actions were documented and addressed, while the senior officer promised a full review of the case. For her, it wasn't just about winning, it was about the message this moment sent. Later that evening, as she watched the footage back, she reflected on how far she had come. This wasn't just her victory, it was a reminder to others that standing up for yourself, even in the face of intimidation, matters. Her story quickly spread, inspiring conversations about accountability, fairness, and the importance of knowing your rights. In the end, she didn't just change her own story, she became a voice for others, proving that courage can light the path to justice.